Okay, 1968?
In 1968, the Attorney General Mitchell waged a kind of a one-man campaign against SDS and the Black Panther Party. And
now this is still the Johnson administration, so Mitchell was...
Well, actually, this was in '69. I'm sorry.
Okay.
This was in '69. Nixon had already become president. Mitchell became his Attorney General. And and then one day we got a call from some student interns inside the Justice Department. And they tipped us off that Mitchell was going to launch a series of raids on movement offices around the country. And so we didn't know what to do exactly. So to head it off or to warn people. So I went on Face the Nation that Sunday morning. And I said on Face the Nation, I said, we got tipped off that today there's going to be raids on our offices and on movement offices all around the country. And the reporters all said, oh yeah, you're paranoid. Who do you expect to believe such a ridiculous story? That afternoon, police and fire trucks pulled up to our office, broke down our doors, arrested a bunch of us
on
Madison Street, hauled us off to jail, beat the crap out of us. And that was the Mitchell raids. And of course, a week later, Time magazine came out, or maybe it was Newsweek, with a big story, and it had me up on a picture of me up on Face the Nation, and said Klonsky was right or something like that. But Mitchell was a ruthless son of a bitch. And but what I told the reporters when I got out of jail is Mitchell will be in prison long before I will be. That he's the real criminal. And you know what? It turned out to be prophetic. Mitchell ended up going to jail, and I'm still here. So I guess I was right about that.
Okay. There is a lot of writings going on in terms of where SDS should go at that time. That's where, again, I saw a reference online about you writing this Rim 2 document. And I'd like to...
In '69, a split took place in SDS at the SDS convention. One faction was the Weatherman faction, which who argued that the SDS should really go underground and begin a campaign of bombings and violence directed not only against the institutions of capitalism, but even against working class people. They thought white workers in particular in the United States were the enemy. And they even wanted to bomb a USO dance in New Jersey at Fort Dix. And if that would have succeeded, they would have killed maybe hundreds of innocent people, wives of soldiers, children, who knows who would have been at that dance. And instead, what happened was the explosion was set off accidentally inside a townhouse apartment in Washington, and I'm sorry, in New York, and it ended up killing 4 SDSers. But to get back, that was one faction in the split, was the Weathermen faction, and we didn't have any patience with that faction, even though a lot of those people had previously been our close friends. We organized a faction called the Revolutionary Youth Movement, RIM, and I wrote a paper, myself, Marilyn Katz, Slim Coleman, I think Ed Jennings, some other people wrote a paper arguing for a much more of a working class approach for the student movement. In other words, moving off the campus exclusively, going into working class communities, organizing the very people that Weathermen were attacking. and some other things too, having to do with how the fight against racism should be carried out. You know, was the well, anyway, and then the third faction was led by Progressive Labor Party, which was kind of very dogmatic, kind of old left kind of organization who had sent its cadre into SDS to try to penetrate it and take it over.
They weren't natural SDSers, they were...
Well, I mean, some of the, of course, some of the rank and file were, you know, but their approach was to split and disrupt SDS, and kind of see it as a recruiting ground for their, simply as a recruiting ground for their party.
Was the Progressive Labor part of the old left?
Well, in a way, they were split off from the Communist Party. They were an old left split off, and they supported the Cultural Revolution in China, you know. But then they ended up attacking the Chinese and the Vietnamese. They attacked the Vietnamese for even negotiating a settlement to the war, you know. So they were ultra lefts, you know. So you had kind of a ultra left faction there, a kind of a dogmatic ultra left faction, ideological faction. Then you had an ultra left faction tactically, with the weathermen who were into all kind of adventurism and you know, blowing things up. You know, and so we were kind of caught between both things, tried to fend off both things, and it was really an untenable position, and it ultimately led to SDS kind of withering away or disbanding.
It's very difficult today to go on the internet and find anything about Progressive Labor, which is kind of a puzzle. Like, was that a planted group, a phony group? Because I can find...
No, I think they're still around, to tell you the truth. There was a lot of sectarian groups in the left, you know, every...
What are the names of authors or spokespeople? Because I haven't had much luck.
Of spokespeople for Progressive Labor Party? Oh, I don't know. You go look on there. You can find them on the web. They put out a newspaper called Challenge, and yeah, back at that time they had a cadre of leaders who were, I don't know how well known they were, you know, but you can look them up. I don't, you know.
Okay. Are they in Chicago?
I don't know. You know, I haven't run into them in 40 years. So
that's the puzzle to me, because like.
Well, they were, you know, these are small sects, you know, maybe a couple hundred people nationally in them, you know, and they never claimed to be any more than that, you know, whereas SDS as a mass movement, you know, had a couple 100,000 people, but you couldn't identify. There were people who identified with the movement, you know. They weren't like signed up members, you know, although some of us we had membership cards. I still have one. I still have an SDS membership card, but it didn't mean anything. I mean, you know, we couldn't collect dues, or, you know, some people would send in $5 dues, but the only way we could raise money was passing the hat at meetings and things like that, or selling newspapers.
In the Chicago area, where were the concentrations or the chapters, either on colleges, I guess, were they in junior colleges? Where were the SDS?
University of Chicago had a big chapter. Northwestern had a big chapter. The community colleges had chapters. And as I said, a lot of them weren't necessarily SDS. Maybe they were Black Student Union. Maybe they were tied to the Puerto Rican socialist movement, the Young Lords organization, you know, that Chacha Jimenez led. They were in the campuses, they were in communities. A lot of the groups were community based. They were ubiquitous. I mean, we had chapters and groups everywhere. And when we brought them together for demonstrations, we had huge demonstrations, huge militant demonstrations. But we also had a lot of factions, factionalism, sectarian splits and divisions, self-interested groups coming in, from the outside, you know, trying to pick off people and split people. And then you had Operation COINTELPRO. So those of us young activists, we were kind of over our heads in a lot of ways. You know, just trying to build this movement in the face of tremendous repression, people being arrested, people being jailed and beaten and killed, and run out of the country and things like that. And somehow or other we survived that year, but while the movement still survives, those organizations couldn't withstand that kind of pressure.